Just to introduce myself, I'm Anjali Panjabi. I'm clearly want to have a disclaimer. I'm not a sociologist, and my entire research on Mira has come out of a personal interest, which yes, it goes back about 20 years. So some of the footage that you will see here is from that time and over time. However, recently I've not been able to engage too much, and in a way I'm restarting that research, and I thought this was a good point, if any, to share some of what I have been, witnessing and being a part of. Just to start with, I'm assuming that most of us do know about Mirabai, and if there's anyone who wants to share, I'd be more than happy to, know what you do know about Mirabai. I mean, there's all the stuff that is already, of course, there on the internet, but if there's anyone wants to share. What comes to mind when you think of Mirabai? Yes, bhajans for sure, yes. Devoted to Krishna. Bhakti. Sorry? White sari, for sure. And what else? Social outcast. Who said that? Social outcast. Okay. And anything else that comes to mind? Ektara. Yeah. Okay. Oppressed by her husband. So, and most of us, where did we know about her? How did we first know about her? This is a question I'm also asked, and I'll in turn also answer this. But when did you first hear of Mira? And from where? School studies. So, it's a lot of it is from text, right? What else? Amar Chitra Katha, yes. Hey, Mamalini, of course, yes. Who can forget her? Especially all of us who grew up in the 70s. Yes, Subbalakshmi. Yes, her songs, yeah, sung by various people, including Lata Mangeshkar has sung her songs too. So, yeah, so this is most of it which we've gathered from films, from texts that we were made to study, or just, people talking about her around us, and most of the things that we hear are more or less what people have mentioned here. So, I would say more or less these kind of images that are all around us, yeah, dressed all in white with her ektara, immersed, inwards, immersed, yeah. So, and often in this kind of a space, very interior scapes, worshipping her Lord in her private space. And of course, Amar Chitra Katha, as you can see, the representations of Mira here, size 0 would have a lot to compete. Yeah. So, this is also what was it for me. I grew up in North India, so a lot of the stories I heard were exactly like, as you said, either reading about her, people around us would mention, and always it was in terms of devotion. And of course, the fact that the story goes that, there was a procession going past the window, that she was a princess, and there was a procession going past the house when she was a young girl, and she happened to ask her mother, "Where is my bridegroom?" And very, very wisely, the mother said, "Oh," pointing to a statue of Krishna, "that's your God, that's your husband." And the story goes, thereafter she decided she's wedded to her God. So what I'm also going to talk about today, so all that is there in our popular culture is there. Already there seems to be a lot less than when I started my research 20 years back, but it is there because recently I've had a lot of youngsters coming up to me and talking to me about Mirabai, and that has been interesting, and that's something I will refer to at the end of my talk today. But initially, let me just start with my journey with Mira in the oral tradition. So what do we mean by the oral tradition? The oral tradition vis-a-vis the tradition of writing that is there, of remembering things. Oral is more by word, verbal, when we pass on stories, memories from one to the other, one generation to other, more by, speaking about it than writing it down. And that's a very, very, it's also the first way of, kind of recording human history, right? From memory, where we rely a lot on memory and human memory at that. So, for me, this journey with Mira in the oral tradition started about 20 years ago when my father, who's a photojournalist, first went to Rajasthan. And he came back from there. I mean, I was very interested in Mira's music. We had watched Gulzar's film, Vani Jairam, M.S. Subbalakshmi, and the music that he came back to and I shared with me was very different from what I was used to. It was not only the music, which was much more earthy, but it was even the lyrics. These are supposedly Mira songs, but songs like I had never heard before. They talked about things that, I never thought. I mean, what are the usual songs that we think about when we think of Mira? Pag Gungru Bandh, it's also the kind of song that has been very much popularized in Hindi films, including the iconic number by Amitabh Bachchan. Yeah. Or Payo Ji Maine, Ram Ratan Dhan Payo, Mere To Girdar Gopal, I believe that was Mahatma Gandhi, one of his favorite songs, and bhajans. But the songs that I was listening to now, I mean, it was like describing experiences that I never thought would be part of, Mira's repertoire. And when did this, so what were the spaces? So it was in search of this kind of tradition that I started going to Rajasthan. For me, initially, it was just an attraction to the music and the tradition, and I was almost following a trail of breadcrumbs of these songs, of the singers who were singing these songs. And then it set me off a journey which is continuing even now. What I discovered are not only accomplished singers, but people like you and me from various walks of life. And initially, my research was mainly confined to Rajasthan. So these were the big cities like Jodhpur, Udaipur, smaller towns like Barmer, Jaisalmer, and even within the desert. Often I would go searching for an artist and, somebody would give me a ride, and before I knew it, it turned out to be, somebody who had a personal connection with Mira, for example. So because it's a tradition of stories and it's a tradition of music, I think the best way I can share this with you is by making you meet some of these people. So just to share a bit more with you about my journey into this oral tradition, actually, the person who really guided me into this was Komal Kothari. He was a folklorist based in Jodhpur. And along with the author Vijay Dandeta, they were both from Rajasthan. And this was very much in the 50s, 60s, and 70s when, when studying folk traditions was not such a hot topic. Both these gentlemen decided to settle into a small village called Burunda, which also happened to Vijay Dandeta's village. And they opened a sanstha called Rupayan Sanstha. And literally they were working with people on the ground, like, they would be. So how it works, I mean, those of you who are familiar with Rajasthan, and not only the touristy part of Rajasthan, that even today, Rajasthan is quite a traditional society. And what I mean by that is the traditional structures are still there. So there are basically, they're often caste-based and class-based. So for example, they would be sitting, and each one of them have their own tradition. So one, there is of course the official tradition, which is of the Rajputs who were ruling the kingdom for a very long time. And there are different kinds. For example, Mira was born in Meta, a small town near Jodhpur. And she really belongs to the Rathore, clan. And so the Rajputs have their, the Charans, who would record history. There would be texts. The queens would have what is called Rani Ki Bhaiyan, the entire account books, entire, tradition and history of the queens that is recorded. And for those who are interested, a lot of that can still be seen in Mehrangarh Museum. But each of the other communities, the so-called not literate communities, would also have their traditions and still have them, which were rich repositories. These were rich repositories of genealogy, of sharing stories and passing them on from generation to generation. And what was very interesting for me to find is that even the lower castes, for example, the Meghwals, they have their own storytellers, and these storytellers are called Bhats, and they also record the history of the Meghwals. And a lot of the stories that I heard about Mira are from the Bhat communities. And where did I go to seek these, gatherings, these artists? These would be in what are called, Ratta Jagis, certain kind of sessions that go on the whole night. These are, in various spaces where the whole community meets. And this could be in the courtyard of a temple, in somebody's house on a special occasion where people just get together. I mean, it's not obviously as idyllic as it sounds. There are divisions, but within these kind of gatherings, people sing song, there are conversations. And for me, it was a glimpse into what, so-called, when we talk about the Bhakti movement, what it could have been like possibly. Because when people sit together, for example, we are sitting together, we would be sitting, there would be a bhajani who would sing, or there would be somebody from the village who knows a particular, say, Mira narrative. And when he or she is singing that, then they would go into Kabir, into Gorakhnath. So they have this entire repertoire of songs. And along with that, the audience also knows the songs. So many of the Mira bhajans that I heard are from people who would be housewife in the normal life, farmers, so not necessarily bhajanis. But they had their own repertoires, which, keep them company. And in between these songs, there would be conversation. And this I witnessed till even a few years back. I haven't been back recently, but I'll be restarting the journey. And I'm very interested in seeing how these spaces are now. And sorry, I actually wanted to show you some clips. But in the meantime, if anyone has, we could make it a more interactive kind of a session. So they meet pretty frequently, actually. More than that also. Sometimes there are special occasions people meet on. So it could be a marriage in somebody's house, there's a birth, sometimes there's death. So all these occasions are marked by community gatherings. So many of these community gatherings are often, as I said, the community that is of a particular caste will meet together. But there are occasions, as I said, when it's the temple or a community space in the village when everyone meets, and it's almost like they sit together and they jam. And it's really, really very interesting. I mean, I've even been to a couple of rave parties that have happened along the borderlines. So yeah, any other questions? We could make it like an interactive session as we move along, as we wait on the videos. Is there a particular demographic that says Priya's Bhajan? Is it like young women or something like that? So actually, all castes, I mean, what I witnessed is slightly the more older generation. But again, there are youngsters also who are getting into it. So when we talk about demography, what we have to say is that, as I said, there are some people who specialize. They're known as bhajanis. And some of them, of course, are from professional caste musicians, like the Manganiyas, for example. So they could be youngsters in that. It's their profession. Some of them take to life for bhajans. It's a choice they make. But otherwise, it's usually, I'm seeing it less in the younger folk. No, they're men and women, a whole bunch of women, and even the singers, a whole bunch of them are women, and I'll be happy to make you meet some of them. The sessions, some of them are the whole night long. Honestly? Yeah, even now. They call the Rata Jagis, and they're also on the Ekadasi of the month. Yeah, yeah. So every month it's like that, there is, all the villages, or interconnected villages. So is hafte mein, is mahine mein, it's in my village. Then I get to know the news that next month it's in someone else's village. So it's also like that. With dinner? With dinner. Acha prasad khub acha milta hai. Yeah, please, let's make it.
So what is it about Mira, like the subject of the title, Difficult Women? So what is it about Mira that attracts you so much, personally?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think I found my community because, it's always good when difficult women get together. And as I was just sharing with someone else the other day, for me, difficult women are basically women who strive, who try to keep to the path they have chosen, and they often break norms, break convention, break norms. And therefore, they're considered difficult by society. For yourself, you're trying to live a life. It may not fit, the usual stereotype or, the mold of what is acceptable by society. So for me, I found that a lot in Mira. So what is attractive to me about Mira vis-a-vis, say, somebody else is the fact that even her life story is something I could relate to. And a lot of people I have met could relate to, unlike other figures from the Bhakti movement. And the fact that her self-expression is so strong. I mean, a lot of that life story is in her songs, in her poems. So, and which I believe is also what makes it easier for people to relate.
I mean, you had talked at the time when you first began your research about women who believe that they are Mira. And could you tell us a bit about that?
So I just also want to share with you that Paro and Jabeen are my collaborators on the Mira project, especially the first film that we had worked on. A few things I know about her, and it was really Paro, Mira, who pushed me to make that film, and they have been, I mean, Jabeen has even been continuing on the second project. And when I came back, overwhelmed with all this, material about Mira, it was literally coming out of my ears and my this thing, and that's Paro was the one to point out that there's some kind of a story to be told here, and um, there are people who actually believe they are Mira, yes. And not only that, they feel that she's living with them. Like, I mean, I felt that too. She's been like often a reference point and a guide. So there are people, and I mean, I haven't come across that many in my research, but some of the other people who have been in the field, so they just as there are, groupies. So for example, Beatles groupies, whole bunch of us are Mira groupies. So, and we all happen to find each other, and many of them are from different parts of the world. So I've often heard of these. I have met only one of them till now in Vrindavan. Uh, and I had one in my family. So, I mean, she actually believed that she was Mira and she used to dress like Mira. So, yeah.
How
How much
okay,
is
how
known about Mira?
Huh?
What is known about Mira's early life? I mean, we know after she had grown up, maybe 15, 16, 17. But earlier, is there any reference?
It's a good question because what happens actually historically, we know nothing about Mira.
Yeah.
And that is true actually of all the other, whether it's Kabir or Ravidas, we don't really have historical documents.
We know that he was born and brought up by somebody else. But Mira, the earlier life is not available at all.
So yes and no. I mean, there's no text which will tell you. Like, say for example, say the king of Jodhpur. It will be documented when he was born. So like that, we do know that Mira was born in Metha. And we do know that she died in Dwarka. We do know that she grew up in Metha under her grandfather Dudaji. So the house of Jodhpur is the big house, the royal house of Rathors, and Metha is a smaller principality, which was under her grandfather. It is believed that she herself was born in Kurki, which was under her father. Yeah, which is near to Metha. It's a smaller town, it's a smaller place. But even in her bhajans, even you'll hear other people talk about it. She's always Mira Metani, Mira from Metha. And if you go to Metha, which is near Jodhpur, you would even find a palace which they say is Mira ka palace. There's even a temple which is dedicated to her. So in that sense, and I also happen to find, I mean, there's not too much of it, but so Mira was in the 16th century. I found a manuscript in the museum at Jodhpur. It happened to be by chance, where in the 19th century manuscript it's mentioned that, and it's obviously belongs, it's her natal home. Uska nani ghar hai wo, and there it is mentioned that Mira was born in such a such year, and that she was married to Bhojraj. And finally, वो संवत में देते हैं, विक्रम संवत में देते हैं.
It is very interesting because
Yeah,
in that old traditional Rajasthan,
yeah,
a female
yeah,
who have so much courage of conviction,
yeah,
she went against all traditional forms of belief,
yeah.
and it was accepted by the society. That is the most interesting thing. That
We don't know how much.
number of people
Yes, yes.
accepted her.
Which is true actually. Somebody told me while I was, doing this research. So there was, in fact, Vijay Dandeta's son, Mahendraji, he used to help me a lot, and wo bhi aake, he used to come and sit with me. So how I used to hear these stories, I used to just be part of these gatherings, and I must say, hats off to all those people who were over so many years who have tolerated me, and my ignorance. So so one day, in fact, Mahendraji told me that you almost believe that she could not have existed, like somebody with this kind of a courage, and always the reference is aaj bhi, even if today there was someone like her. So we don't know how much of it is like, in retrospect, this been added to the story. And we don't know the extent of the objections that were, but therefore definitely there were objections. So she lived a life on her terms, and there were difficult choices she made, and therefore difficult woman. But to say there was no opposition is also wrong. There was a lot of opposition. You know, that is why we often hear in her poems that there were attempts to kill her.
No, opposition was definitely
Yeah,
there. It had to be
yeah,
there.
yeah.
But the way she overcame
Yes,
those objections,
yes,
fearlessly and a certain courage of her convictions.
yes,
I mean, there must have been something in her childhood
yes.
which sort of built her to reach this
So
level.
it's a good observation, and just to share that since she grew up in a royal house of the Rajputs, she would have been given quite some education. You know, she would have been given education in the scriptures and you know, like a good healthy education. So, and it is believed that Rao Dudaji, her grandfather, had a great influence on her. Yeah, I totally agree with you. There must.
I believe that she was educated because she had a correspondence with Tulsidas actually. And I believe that the bhajan Bhajamere Ramratan comes out of that correspondence. And she was harassed by her family members and she wrote to Tulsidas.
So the fact that she had an education because she was a princess, I mean, obviously, whatever was given to the other royal princesses would have been given to her. As far as this correspondence is concerned, actually, what is very interesting is actually there's no physical evidence of it in the sense of it's not from her times. So, and also the fact, as I said, though she was, I mean, first of all, she's a woman and a troublesome one at that. So there were not too many people interested in keeping records of her. I mean, especially in her marital home, you know. So, which is interesting is that almost for 200 years after her death, there's almost a silence about her in official texts. So, where this, you know, how authentic is this correspondence? Like, there are many stories like that, you know, that.
Because it comes also in connection with Tulsidas's, like when you was Tulsidas's life and his
Yeah,
text.
yeah,
So obviously there must have been because if it comes,
yeah, yeah,
according to
yeah,
both traditions,
yeah,
then there
yeah.
must be some truth to it.
So, it is believed, but there's no historical evidence of that, is all I'm saying. Yeah.
I was wondering if it's unusual. I mean, you've spoken about how there are all those like biographical narratives, that show that mustard seed and the way they tell the story of Meera. And isn't that a little uncommon that the poet herself becomes the subject of so much legend, right?
So, which is the other interesting thing, which is actually also, you know, a part of what I'm going to share today. So, I'm very happy to talk about that. So, till now, we've been talking about the official, you know, texts and the records. But what is there is another record in the oral traditions where people have stories, they have entire narratives, and they have something which is called Meera ki Janam Patri. So, when you say, ki, do we know anything about her childhood? Yes, we do. But we don't know them from official accounts. We know them from these really rich, fascinating narratives. And one of them, which I was searching for a very, very long time, I had heard it in an archive, audio archive, actually describes Meera when she was born. She was as small as a seed. And, you know, then she was born on Ikkam, Budwar ka Ikkam pe hui thi. And there was celebration. I mean, it's like, you know, it was total celebration because it was supposed to be that she's very, you know, it's very auspicious, her birth. And so it's said in that Meera ki Janam Patri. And it's referred to that, you know, Rao Duda ji ke ghar poti hui hai. So literally her aunt, she goes to the carpenter and says, Khati is the carpenter, you know, make a cradle for the girl. We have been blessed with a child. Then she went to someone else and say, uske liye kokum, oh no, like that, what is called that red color. Ha, to usko tayar karo. So like that, you know, there's a lot of celebrations. And there's an entire history of her that is recorded in these oral legends, which describes not only her birth, it describes how she grew up, how she took Ravidas as her teacher, and then even her life after that. And which is also what I found fascinating and which I was looking for a very long time. Yes. Yes. Sorry, I can't see you. Yeah.
During your research,
Yes.
what you've been doing, how did you sort of validate the authenticity of her poems? Because that's something which has really bothered me. A lot of poems are attributed to Meera.
Yes.
How would you know they are Meera's and not somebody else's voice? Because there's this controversy, and since I'm very interested in this, I really want to know.
Sure, it's a question which is a very valid question. And again, because in our country, what we don't realize is there's a lot of the literature that we have, including the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. It's actually all started with oral. So we have a very rich oral tradition. And also, whether it is Mira, again, same with Kabir, even Surdas, there are very few original poems or texts that you will find recorded somewhere. So with Mira till now, I mean, since I'm not a historian, I have not done my search like that, but since I'm interested, I've been following it. From her times, again, there are no texts or poems that are there of hers. So we don't even know whether she used to write or she used to, how she used to compose these songs. So there are only two from the 16th century, later 16th century. So from her times, there are none. But there is this whole body of work, so it's only closer to the 17th century and the 19th century that we find manuscripts of Mira. So what I mean to say is even the poems in the texts, all the poems that we've been taught in school and otherwise, it's very, very, if we really go into the authenticity of that, we will not go very far. But there's the entire corpus of Mira songs. So there's an entire body of work that is attributed to her. And there is an entire body of work that is attributed to her in the oral tradition also. There's a set of songs and poems that once we hear them and we hear them long enough, you can identify as Miras. So, so to answer your question, there is no such authenticity, but traditionally, by hearing these songs, and people of course may have contributed. So as Paro and I often used to discuss, it's almost like a pool that you dip in with your song, because finally what identifies a song as Mira's or Kabir's is the refrain in the end. But there is a certain philosophical thought or a turn of thought, and this is Kabir's. Similarly, there's a certain thought, an emotion or a journey that is mentioned in the song, plus of course that, it's the female voice that you tend to think it's Mira's. But technically, there are only two texts, and that also from, I think, 50, 60 years after her death, that people have said are the closest to being the authentic texts.
Does Kabir also have a role in himself? So whatever his texts are, subsequent recordings of his voice.
Exactly.
And his chap, like people's chaps used to be put in any, like
Yeah.
a chap would be put in any song, just because Kabir became popular, many people put his chap in their songs because they followed the thought process, but so it's very difficult to tell where the actual text, and I
Yes.
think that in Indian tradition it seems to matter somehow less than.
Yes, it's a fluid tradition. And in a way it's accepted, एक वो नदी है, वो उसमें बहते जाओ, मीरा की नदी है, वो कबीर की नदी है, उसमें अपने भी हाथ डालो, निकाल लो, बोलो.
And it also comes from erasing the self, because in the bhakti tradition the self
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
submerged into
Yeah.
the divine, and therefore it stops mattering, and
Yes.
it doesn't matter who's talking.
So it doesn't matter, and also it belongs to a bigger community. It's like people sit and so all this thing we talk about ownership and proprietorship. It doesn't hold very much ground in these traditions. And also the fact that these songs, these bhajans, they only come alive when you're singing them in a gathering, and people are singing, adding their own. So it's kind of goes with the territory actually. Besides, as you said, that it's part of the tradition also. And initially, like you said, even it used to worry me. I come from a literary background, I've been a literature student. So when, how do I, find the authenticity? But really, it stopped mattering after a point, and I've just started enjoying it all now.
These ladies who think they are Veera, otherwise sound?
They're putting up.
They sound otherwise. Okay, they believe they're Meera. Are they functional?
Depends on what you think is, yeah, it's a good question, it's a valid question. Depends on what you think is functional, I guess. But I would say my aunt was running her business after her husband passed away. So she was quite functional. So at one level she was Meera. Even the other women, and I find that the couple of them that I've met and the many others that I've read about, what I find is in a way, many of their aspirations, many of the lives that they would have wanted to live, they can live by becoming Meera. So what society will not allow it becomes acceptable once you become Meera. And to this extent, a little bit, I also took advantage of it when I was traveling in the interiors of Rajasthan, and especially 20 years back when I was much younger. And it was often uncharted territory. So people used to often ask, I say, how come you've just come? I said, I used to say, Meera also used to do it, no? She used to also travel on her own. So, in a way, it's interesting how society allows you a lot once you take on that persona. Yeah, but it's a good question, yeah.
So, what about the teaching? So you would have gone through a lot of while you were studying about Meera, you would have come to know that these were the things she used to do. So were there any teachings that you learned from Meera's life and you're imbibing it in your life currently? Is there anything that comes on top of your head?
Yeah, so it has been different things. Actually, it's been very interesting, and it's been different things at different points. And you would have thought somebody who lived 100 years ago, and especially again, like all of us, you initially grow up with these stories of this woman entirely devoted to Krishna in her interior world. I mean, I was like, how much can I have in common with her? But more and more I find at every stage of my life that I can relate and I can, say now, for example, when I was younger, it was more about choices, about marriage, about the life you want to live. And as I grow older, it's about the solitary life she chose. So whatever it is that it's there in her songs, it's there in her stories that she did leave the palace. And then a large part of her life in the end, it was about wandering. So she went to Vrindavan, she ended up in Dwarka. And I've often wondered about that solitary life, because everybody talks about her, Meera the princess, Meera the young kid growing up, taking Ravidas as a teacher, saying Krishna is my husband. But what about the older Meera? So more and more as I grow older, I find that I'm very interested in that life of wandering and the solitary life that she lived in her later years. So to answer your question, at different points in my life, I formed a different correlation. So the first part of my research was mainly looking for the singers, and more as I said, I found these people, amazing people, who were just relating to her, and in their everyday lives, they were kind of living with her.
तुम हो मेरे प्राण सुधारण जीवन किसी बद हो तुम हो मेरे प्राण सुधारण जीवन किसी बद हो यदि आलू जीवन किसी बद हो ए एक घड़ी मेरे पलक बराबर किकर निकले ला दिनड़ा दो ये पालक नहीं रे आवड़े दाता तुझरे दर्शन बिना मोय पालक नहीं रे आवड़े हमारा नाम पेमाराम जी है, जाति पिंडेल, गाड़ा बीजा फेरते, खेती बाड़ी का काम करते हैं, भी साथ साथ भगवान का भजन करते, मीरा का बीजा तीजा भगवान का भजन करते हो। पानी में बैठे बैठे एकला साथ में कोई होए कोई खोटी घड़े आप तो भजन ही गावता रहा। दिन भर तो टंकियां ढाला 3-4 हो 2 रुपया बन जावे एन किसानों के बे टंकियां बीजी ढाला करा होदी भरो नली लगान भरन लावा भरन लाए पर इन पास ही टंकी ढाल फेर जाओ टंकी भरो उड़ने नीरो घंटे भरो दमदारो करो तावड़े को दमदारो कर पासे बेर का पासे भरते भरते सांझ पड़े एड़ी 8 हाथ की टेम हो न पीछे गिरया हो। पूरी संसार जानते हो जगत बाई एक मीरो ही बनी है दूसरो कोई नहीं बनी है तो एड़ा भक्ति मीरों की कीवी जना मीरो सुधरी भगवान की भक्ति की आप सुधरो तो केठा एड़ी कठोर भक्ति कीवी बस कोई में धिन्या राखी को ने माँ ने बाप ने कुटुंब ने कबीले ने सब छोड़ दियो ने एक भगवान की भक्ति कीवी।
There are no monuments in Pemaram's kingdom where she could have scratched out, Meera was here. But she was generous and left her songs behind. For the people who found her songs, Meera's pain was like their own. an echo of their experience on the margins of society. Her songs have been sung and shared and kept alive across centuries by communities like the Meghwals and the Bhils.
Extract from the first film, a few things I know about her. And this actually happened like this. As I told you, I was looking for this Bhil singer who was very well known Bhajani, Magnaram Bhil, and I was told he, lives in the interior of the deserts and did not have strong desert walking legs in those days. So somewhere along, as I was walking into the desert, I had a colleague from Komal Kothari Sanstha with me, and then we came across this camel cart driver who very nicely offered to give us a kind of a hitch, this thing, kind of a ride. And then, of course, I got talking. Kahan ja rahe ho? Where are you going? Looking for Mira. Do you know any Mira songs? Of course I do. And the song that you hear here is literally happened like this. We were sitting at the back, the little place that is there at the back of the tank. And as we walked and we went into the desert for a half an hour ride, he was actually having this conversation with me. And it is really very much meeting all the people who connected with Mira and as you said, very nicely so, that who have incorporated her, the persona of Mira and her songs in her daily lives. These very people became my inspiration for the first film. So I'll just play another clip.
मैंने अभी तक किसी ने गुरु नहीं बनाया, मीरा कोई गुरु माना है। मैंने कहा हमारे गांव में ही है गुरु, तो संसार की जगत गुरु है। उस टाइम शादी हुई थी ना, तब थोड़ा जाना ना अकेले को नहीं भेजते थे, और कुछ आस्था भी थोड़ी कम थी इधर वालों की। जब ऐसा होता था भी वो रोक लगा दी, नहीं जाना वो नहीं, तो मैं घर पे जाके मम्मी को बोलती, मेरे पिताजी को, वो बोलते मीरा जी भी तो ससुराल गई थी। जैसे कि भाई मीराबाई को राणा जी ने नहीं बजने देते थे भगवान का भजन वगैरह, तो मैंने सोचा अपन भी तो वही हैं, तो हो सकता अपने भी राणा जी ऐसे ही हैं तो नहीं बजने देंगे। तो मीराबाई अपने महल में वो पूजा करती थी, तो मैं मेरे घर में करने लग गई। रोटी नहीं खाती, भाई मंदिर नहीं गई, आज खाना नहीं खाऊंगी। तो फिर ये लोग करते थोड़ी परेशानी, मैं कहती मीराबाई भी तो नहीं खाती थी, लेकिन मेरे तो गिरधर गोपाल दूसरा न कोई, मैं तो कहूँ मेरे तो 4 भुजा और मीराबाई दूसरा भी कोई नहीं। फिर इन्होंने सब ने सोच लिया ये जाएगी तो सही, और फिर मेरे को क्या थोड़ा दुख होने लगा, मेरे को रोज आ जाता था। छुट्टी थी तो मैं कुछ नाराज हो जाती, तो फिर बोलते जाओ जाओ जाओ।
Mine is the dark one who dwells in Braj. Friends, marriages of this world are false. They're wiped out of existence. Wed my indestructible one, whom the serpent death cannot devour. My beloved dwells in the heart. I have seen the source of all bliss. Mira's Lord, indestructible life giver, remains true life after life. And I mean, she truly believed that, punarjanam ka saath hai. This poem is from a text. It's not, it's something that I had picked up from a text. So this again is an extract from a few things I know about her. But this is also to tell you how this, journey with Mira has been, and with the people, who remember her. I mean, the structure of the presentation has gone a little haywire, but this is all good. This is how it's meant to be. This is how it would be in a bhajani gathering, that, like whole night long we can be at it. So what I'm also going to share with you is this, story which is often not talked about that much, is the fact that the stories that there are there in Amajyoti Katha and others, they often don't talk about this rather difficult relationship, a relationship of choice that Mira made, which is to choose Ravidas as her guru. And the stories I heard, they often pass over it. But in the oral tradition, especially with the people that I spent a lot of the time with, actually this is often the foremost. It's often what defines their relationship with Mira. And it's a very active choice that she makes. It's also the choice that, if we believe her story, created a lot of disturbance in her marital life later on also, because it wasn't only about taking Ravidas as her teacher. A lot of it was going to the spaces where Ravidas, yeah, or, we don't know what the Bhakti movement was like, at that time, but, gatherings where all kinds of people from all walks of life, especially being a woman, especially being of the royal family. And this is again often mentioned in her poems. She's often called a Kulnasi, and she also says it in a poem. So I'm going to share a clip which will show this briefly.
કે તું નીસ ને તું ગુરુ કર્યો પણ એનો કને કાંઈ શક્તિ હે રાણોજી કયો જેને કયો કે નીસ કે ને કે ઉજળી કોમ રી ઉદાસ રી है एन गुरु बेटिया मैं मीराबाई एक परसों मांगियो जन कुंड में आई गंगा माई।
रविदास कौन थे और उन्होंने मीरा को अपना शिष्य कैसे बनाया?
रविदास जी तो आज के वो चमड़ो ही पाड़ता, चमड़ो रंगता, जूती बनाता के तुम मारो साथ कर ले थारे भगवान नु कई काम है के राणो जी कहवे जनबा क्यों के मारे तो सिर पर वो सांवरिया रा हाथ है जो कि मैं तो इन लार ही रहूं के नहीं मारे थारे परीत नहीं है के राणा।
So what she said is actually is very interesting. And something else that I want to push our narrative also forward. Till now, we've been mainly talking about Mira as she was growing up, and at the difficult marriage. It said that she did not want to get married, but her mother was like, "Oh, this is, strategically, and this is a big house of Chittor. We cannot turn them down." And it is believed that Ravidas also. Some legends and stories say that. A lot of the songs that are there, so what we have talked about are the songs which we think can be attributed to Mira, with Mira's chap on it. But there's an entire body of songs which is about Mira. And many of them are samvads, dialogues between Mira and Rana. So it's quite interesting actually, because some people say he was a villain, some people say it was a brother-in-law. But what I found in the oral tradition is this beautiful set of songs which is about the Rana and Mira, where he's always trying to persuade her to come back, enjoy the pleasures of life, and she's like, no. So this is one such. The interesting thing, of course, here is the lady, Gangabai. She is unfortunately no more. She's from a Regar family. Obviously, you can see it. She talks about the profession. So what is interesting in these stories is that people in these stories start talking about their lives and start seeing Mira in their, So here, of course, and this was, when I was saying that, I was asking about Mira, she was more interested in telling me about Ravidas. And then she shared this episode, which is that the Rana is telling Mira that, come back, what do you have to do there? Come back to the palaces. And Mira is saying, and who's this, Ravidas that you've taken as your teacher? And then she tells him that, he's my teacher. He's the one that I've, chosen to guide me through life. And then are the harsh words that Gangabai uses, that, oh, Rana, you go back. There is no love lost between the two of us.
I must follow him. The Lara Jam with it, like, follow him.
Yeah. I will follow him. Yeah. So, yeah. And Radha Sham dwells in my heart. Some say Mira has lost her mind. Some say she has brought shame to her clan. I have flung aside my veil. I sing out loud and dance in abandon for my lord. Ranaji sends a poisonous cup. Mira laughs and she drinks from it. What can she do? Her lord is the mountain bearer. Her heart is caught in the bhakti part. So this is again a song that poem of hers that I took from a text. And this is like it was in Rajasthani, and it's compiled by some scholars in Rajasthan. And you often come across this particular poem. So as you can see, even this poem itself talks about her defiance, the fact of throwing back the veil, of breaking the norms, and therefore the attempt to kill her. We don't know who this Rana is. As I said, the popular story is that it was not her husband, it was her brother-in-law. But the point is there were attempts to kill her, and she survived them. The other thing I want to just mention here, that a lot of the communities that I ended up working a lot with, for example, the Meghwals, they're also from the lower caste and they're weavers. And a lot of the Meera bhajanis that I met, including Mahisha Ram, whose music I'll be sharing, they sing Meera songs. And often their equation is, as I said, also with Ravidas. And they often see Ravidas, almost like a weaver, and those who are the Regas will see him as the cobbler. So it's not only Meera. Interesting thing happens with the figure of Ravidas also across, yeah. So talking about difficult women, this is again from a few things I know about her. So this is also my introduction to what bhakti could be like, where it is not just devotion, because what we grew up hearing about Meera is that she's devoted to her Lord, but that when you choose the path of bhakti, it's a choice you make again to walk a very difficult path, and with all its set of, and this lady I met, I happened to meet her by chance in Barmer, and she used to live in the desert. She also is a bhajani, and it was very unusual at that time. So I'm talking about a good 15 years back, because the bhajanis often travel around. It's easier for men to do that, so the women will be bhajanis, but they'll be mainly in their own villages, or the cities, or the towns. But Tari Bhir, whom I met, actually, let her speak, yes, you can hear her story in her own words.
भजन तो सारा भी गाता है, पर लुगाई नहीं गाती। लुगाई मैं अकेली गाती। हो मैं एक, 1000 में कोई 2 शेर निकलता है। ये तो खरा खरीरा खेल है, लाठू पाठू नहीं गा सकते। ये तो एक तरह की खौड़ेरी धार है, जो धार में तो सलियो कौन जाए। तो लुगाई तो सारे बैठे हैं, उन्हें तो भक्ति को नहीं ली, उन्हें तो भगवा को नहीं पैर, तो मीरा क्या पैरा। तो कोई लाखों करोड़ में मीरा एक ही हुई।
Basically, which actually also links up to what I want to share now, is that the imagining of, in all these songs that are there in the oral tradition, that Meera is described as, herself is described as a weaver, she's described as Opaniharan, who goes to fetch water. So suddenly she's no longer the princess in the palace. She's a woman who is, of course, having the solitary life, or she is also like a householder. So it's also how the image of Meera changes. And the love for Krishna is expressed in different ways. There is, of course, devotion, but that here it's almost like, why didn't you make me into a peacock, like a Uddhav, that I could, talk about my love for you. So, and this whole is, so it's more, the devotion is more like she was, for her God was, she was in love with her God. So the songs, the expressions.
Part was wanting to escape
Mhm.
Like she often talks about wanting, say she wants to become a police officer, but you want to escape your circumstances.
So yeah, you are wanting to escape yourself, but it's also the different.
Circumstances, like
Yeah.
social circumstances.
Yeah. So it could be that, in this song, Tari Bheel, it's also the circumstances of her life, but since it's also a part of the Meera corpus of songs, and I'll be sharing a few others, which are from the Meghwals also sing, the Bheel sing, where Meera is often this person doing these everyday things and talking about the landscape and the wildlife around and the habitation around. So that also comes into the poetry. And this I saw a lot, not only in the songs, but in the legends also that So what you're saying is right, but it's also this. Of course, you are.
It's also about them.
Yeah.
You don't, because we don't know what was the text.
Yeah.
That what she actually wrote and what it could also be that they are imagining their imaginings of Meera. They are telling stories about her, which might not be like something that she wrote, but could be like how they interpret how it could have been. Sure, which I guess is the point Anjali is making. But I think that also what you're saying.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Is that, I mean, again, there's an overemphasis on always seeing it as a sociological thing, right? Like people wanting to overcome their circumstances and then seeing people only in terms of a certain identity. Yeah. But even Tari Bheel is talking, like she said this fantastic thing, not every woman can walk the edge of the sword like me. Yeah. And to some extent, each one of us who also wants to be seen and say, I'm me, I'm not just my identity, but I'm something else. Yeah. Which is, I think, what is unique about Meera's poetry, which is also why she lends herself to legend and to be seen as me is so central to the poetry.
Yeah.
That it's also something, therefore, that lends itself to other people expressing themselves as well.
Absolutely. And to say that, you can't compare me to others. So, of course, this song is what it is, but it's a repertoire, it's one of the many songs that she sings. But for me, really, why I kind of, connected with her is, as Paru said, that, this idea she has of bhakti. It's like walking the edge of the sword, and that, like women around me, they're also, she was married, by the way. She's a householder. She's also a bhajani, and like even her imagining of Krishna, Tari Bheel I'm talking about now. She was like, I'm like an ant going across the desert. You may not know it, but he can hear me, he can see me. It's also her imagining not only of Meera but of Krishna. So it's also her imagining about herself as this person, almost like Meera. Of course, she cannot be like Meera. Meera is one in a million. But like I am also something, like I'm different from the others, yeah, these so-called devotees.
Actually repeated across many bhakti poetry.
Sorry, I didn't
This
hear you.
metaphors of the edge of the sword, of
Yeah.
being Suji upar sej piya.
Yeah.
And of like, because I'm an ant, like, like चींटी के पाँव में नेवर है तो वो भी सुनता है.
Exactly.
That those concepts are there in
Yeah.
across bhakti poetry.
Yes.
It's also about finding yourself as in your personal self as
Yeah.
opposed to where you are in all of
Yeah.
this. And that's also because organized religion doesn't allow for the personal self.
Yeah.
And bhakti is about the personal self
Yeah.
relating
Yeah.
their relationship.
Absolutely, you're right about it. And also the fact that it's democratic. I mean, she can imagine it. Tari Bheel can imagine it. Meera can imagine it. That she can be one in a million too. And she can relate to this concept of that, I can be an ant across the desert, but, my feelings is on. Yeah. Sorry, I did not get your question. Yeah. Mm. Of course, very much so in all. Yeah, yeah. See, again, today I'm sharing more of the oral tradition, but Meera's songs, her bhajans, her poems, I mean, they always have, for her God, he's not like somebody on a pedestal. Of course, he is all that, but for her, she's waiting for, who'll come to her, whom she loves, and she desires also, and she expresses it in her poetry. Yeah. Yes, it's there in her poetry. And I think maybe in one of them that I'll be sharing today, it is there. It is the text that I originally attributed to her. It's there if you want to look it up. I had read it in an academic article, but now it's there on Wikipedia also. Yeah, so it's pretty
Yeah,
like
I
that, it's almost like Naina ka kya dosh, Naina to, it's like, it's pretty, yeah, 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 yeah. So that's outside the scope of today's this thing, but definitely there are, and if you're interested, you can share them. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, since you've done research, I'm curious to know. These were talking about 500 years back when there was extreme patriarchy. Now here is a lady who has literally defied all norms, and she's roaming around Rajasthan, wherever, Brindavan. How is it that women are supporting her? Basically, they would reject having to be seen with someone like that, who's an outcast, so called. Also, how do you think she supported herself? Was she a bhajani, and that's how people just leave the money? I'm really, really curious about this because many people might want to walk out from their circumstances and go off, but finance is a very big thing.
Of course they are.
Safety is another very
Yes,
important thing
yes.
for women. We had bandits and thugs and all that all over. So I'm really curious as to how she actually survived.
So it's a very good question. It's something that I was also very, very curious about because even the little bit of travel I did, I fell ill at least 5 times. It's just physical facts like this. And which brings me to another very, very important point about the oral tradition, that there's actually an entire community supporting you. One of the reasons that, the people who objected did, the household she was married into, all the wise people around her, is because she was stepping out of the palace and she was going to, sadhu santo ki community, whatever you may call it. You may call it the bhakti movement. It's about finding your own community. They could be the lower caste, but that's what it was. It was a support network. And from what I understand about that time is there were many of these, I'm very curious also, actually, frankly speaking, about her life, as I shared earlier also. So it's all very well to talk about when she was in the palace, but the life after. But she took the life of a renouncer, and in our tradition, if you take, once you take the life of jogan ban gayi thi. So once you take on that, then there is a different community which, so it could be alms, it could be the community of the people who were like the lower caste people, it is thought, who supported her, or that she had people like, but obviously around the network, because if you see where she came out of the palace, she went back to Meta, it's believed. But, and this is all stories, but there also she was not given much of a help. So then she went to Vrindavan, then she traveled around, then she went to Dwarka. So obviously along the way, as a Jogan, there were fellow communities, like there were different communities that were supporting her. And that's really, really the strength of the oral tradition. And, figures, bhakti figures like Meera and Kabir, that they were not isolated. They were part of a community of their choice, which in different ways would have supported them, but obviously it was a harsh life. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. Very interesting to know that. Yeah, yeah. Yes.
There's a very, very long tradition of asceticism in our country.
Yes.
When Buddha Gautam left his palace and
Yes.
started roaming on the roads, or
Yes.
Mahavir left his business,
royal
whatever it was,
business.
money lending or whatever he was doing,
Yes.
once they started going out and
Yes.
preaching, apne aap the public would come and whoever agreed with them or was like to hear them would come and give them food, would come and give them alms. In fact, Buddha later had to make some strict rules about these alms to avoid corruption.
Yeah.
Because he said the monks must beg every day for just the amount that they can consume in a day. They should not accumulate food, and they should not gather, little treasures of grains and then end up selling that and so on. So he was very clear about that. Only in the monsoons, for those 3 months, were they allowed to hang on to bigger stocks and to stay in one place and not to wander about. But otherwise, every day had to be in the community. So asceticism necessitated adopting certain rules of life. And that support seems to be coming spontaneously.
Yeah.
And throughout, if you see throughout Indian history, I mean, even in Sufism, this Chishtiya Silsila, again wandering about, speaking in crossroads where two roads meet. There would be a bazaar, there'd be a marketplace, and they would be speaking and gathering support. So I don't think it was so difficult. And as far as bandits and dacoits are concerned, they probably didn't have enough of resources. They didn't have, Mirabai wouldn't be walking around with gold bars or something. So that danger would not have been there.
Yeah, that story, what you're saying is true. Having said that, obviously it was different from the life she would have lived in the palace. So it's a life of choice that she has. And as I said, just the physical hardship of being on the road for a long time. Absolutely, Yeah. Like when I fell ill, I wondered if she also must have had a runny stomach one of those bad days. It's a practical thing, Yeah. And so as you talked about this life of asceticism, and as we've seen, I mean, growing up, I've seen that. I mean, often they're in groups, so we don't know whether she was alone as doing these walks solitary. And that's what I also feel about her, that she was at one level, saying she's inwards, not thinking, but to live such a long life and live the life she wanted, she was obviously also thinking about these things somewhere.
The life of the early ascetics, I'm again talking about, before zero Christian era. They gather people who walk with them for a little
Yes.
while, and then they say, "Excuse me, I have to go back."
Yes.
So they would just take them up to another place.
Yes.
They would drop them and go, and some new people would come.
Yes.
And this would go on.
Yes.
And they would beg for things like blankets because the weather was cold
Yeah.
and so on. And the public would be.
Yeah. Like coming back to Buddha, it said, when he came out of that long spell of meditation, is that he was offered this bowl of kheer, when he said that. So yes, that is true. I mean, that is there, but I think the question in itself is valid because it was a difficult life. Of course, there is support of a different kind. And there are structures to support. It's there in this thing, that famous episode with Jeev Gosai in Vrindavan. So, she went there. People had their different mats and all that. And so there were things, it's a different route that you go, and there are pit stops on that route that are there also. Yeah. So I don't know how we're doing time-wise.
6:20.
Oh, okay. I have a lot more to show.
Because we have a little more, because I'm not, because you're chatting back and forth.
Yes, yeah. So I'll just speed it up a bit then. That would be covered good ground. So just in terms of the structure of the talk, as we've already talked about it, these different imaginings of Mirabai, I'm going to share a song by Maisharam. Margiya Buharu. You'll be able to give a better translation. This is only audio. Basically what she's saying, Meera is saying, Margiya Buharu, she's trying to welcome Krishna, that, I'll clean up the path where you're supposed to, because she's waiting and then he may be coming, or she's preparing for his return. So she's literally going to clean up the path. So she's almost like a woman living in the huts. That's often there in a lot of the stories and songs. I just want to live the mendicant's life in a hut. And then she's sprinkling flowers, planning for his return. And she says, papiya hoti to, if I was the bird, the papiya, the bird, I would do this. There are different imaginings. So I'll just make you listen to a snatch of it and we can move on. Maisharam Meghwal, he's in fact very well known now, and he also comes for the Kabir festival. And he has a good, he sings a lot of Meera bhajans. He's known to, but he's a professional now. He's a professional.
के जागोवानो फुलड़ा बिछावो रे मार के जा बोवानो फूलड़ा बिछावो रे कृष्ण तेरा दर्शन पाया हरे राम कृष्ण तेरा दर्शन पाया हरे राम पपयो वेजू आमे मोबे धीरे पपयो वेजू आमे मोबे धीरे या मेरी घोर सोवाई हरे राम आहा मेरी घोर सोवाई हरे राम मार गिजा बोवानो फूलड़ा बिछावो रे मार गिजा बोवा
I mean, and this I had done a recording with him in the field, but Mahesharam's songs are available. I mean, I think there's a record company which had come out with his songs. So this is all part of my first part of my research, and I'm going to end it with a very special person. His name is Padmaram Meghwal, and basically, I mean, he's again passed away a few years back, and it was really his connection with Meera and what being a bhajani, his life in bhajans, and that life is what really connected me much more with this tradition. So I'm just showing you a clip, and then we'll move on to the second part, which I'll share with you briefly.
अगर जनड़ी रति रे चुगावा अरे अगर ई चनड़ी रति रे चुगावा अरे अपने वाया तो से जलावे अपने हाथ से जलाव दुगीड़ा रे जामती जामती जाम कामीड़ा रे जामती जामती जाम और बल दल होगी वाला बसम की देरी बल दल होगी वाला बसम की देरी और अपने वो याता से रलावे अपने हाथ से रलाव दूंगीड़ा रे दामती दामती दाम स्वामीड़ा रे दामती दामती दाम घट भीतर रो प्योर प्रेम डोर चटकी ज्ञान बास घट भीतर रो प्योर प्रेम डोर चटकी सुरत कलाली चढ़ी बरत पर सुरत कलाली
मेरा विराग लग गया मैं भी एक भजन गाना शुरू कर दिया बालापन में बहुत ही भजन गाया पूरी रात संजय मेहनत शाम का बेचते थे सुबह दिन उगे जते बिनो हाथ रे मेहनत रात भर भजन गाते थे मालिक हृदय में ही है ये बोलता पुरुष नहीं ये बोला नहीं ये मालिक है यही मालिक है को मंदिर में है नहीं मंदिर में ठीक है अजाना के लिए मंदिर है और जो साधु महात्मा हमारे वहाँ हुए वो अंदर ही दर्शन हुआ उजड़ा हो गया.
those of you who could not read the subtitle of the first song, I mean, it has that bit of that, where Mira is talking about, she's waiting for. So not only is the imagining of Mira different, imagining of Krishna is also very different. So Krishna is also seen as a yogi. So she's a yogan waiting for her yogi, and she's saying, don't go away. I will reduce myself to ashes that you can smear on yourself, but don't go away. So, and the metaphor could be also of destruction of the ego and the self, but, it's a very evocative song. And Padmaram Meghwal himself, he was very well, got to be known very well in the bhajan mandi, the bhajan circuit. And it's again an upside down history, which is there with a lot of these bhajaniks. So he's obviously a Meghwal from a lower caste. And his teacher was a Brahmin, Sejo Brahmani. And Sejo actually came from Pakistan at the time of partition, and her teacher was a Sufi. कमल क्या नाम था उनका, बहुत फेमस है वो, मैं उनका नाम भूल रही हूँ, प्लीज पार्डन माय दिस थिंग, कुमार भगत करके उनका नाम था. तो उनके गाने काफ़ी, those days it was a poorest border. So, and I actually went to Sejo's village, and there is actually this little, they built this shrine, and all kinds of people have contributed. So yeah, so this is so far as it goes. So if you don't have any question, then I'll move on to the second part, and then we can just have more questions. Yes. Ji? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so Santosh is that whom you met earlier, the housewife. She's from a higher caste. She's, and I've come across others also. And the songs they sing are more like the songs I'm used to hearing. So they do sing them. But it's just that the songs I heard in the oral tradition, I found much more, things I didn't know and know about much more. So to answer your question, yes, I have. Yeah. You had a question?
Yeah. So just in terms of your research very generally, like irrespective of whether you're studying a person or a myth, all of your sources are like oral traditions, and there's no tangible proof. Like, I mean, it's all oral. So then, does that mean your research process includes like having faith, or how do you decide what you?
See, I think first of all, you need to have a connect. It needs to mean something to you, and as I said, a lot of our literature in India, in our country, from all over different parts of the country, most of it is oral, including, as I said, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. So if you tried looking for authenticity, for 100% proof, we wouldn't go very far. The other thing is, as I said, in Mira's tradition and in many of the other Bhakti poets' tradition, there's no absolute proof, because if you're outside the system, then certainly the system is not going to be recording your poetry and your history. And more than that, as I said, often they were from different castes. So I think just growing up in India, you don't really, for me, it has validity. It's people's experiences, it's people's memories. People may have added, as we were discussing, your own part to it, your own story, but it has validity. It's an ongoing human story.
So that it doesn't matter which one is true, which one might not be. It's just like every story.
Well, it's not like that. So what I've shared with you are stories which they have a commonality. I would have heard it more than once. Yeah. And they seem to belong to a corpus of stories and songs. So there is a lot of research and thought that has. So it's not random.
Yeah. So you just have to decide with each new thing.
Well, it's an ongoing process. Like this process also with the first film was quite a few years, and it's been ongoing since then. And there are a lot of people who are also studying the oral tradition. So I had a lot of academics whom I was talking to, the folklorist Kamal Kotari, who've been doing a lot of research on this, and they've been archiving this and recording this. So yeah, so it was not random. Yeah. It's it's ongoing, and it's. But yeah, if you're looking for absolute full. That it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist, I said, as in the written version also, because that also is not from her time. Yeah.
But then academic, it's like because we are thinking of academics in a Western context.
Okay.
So the tradition that you said is more from this the community or the caste with a lower caste, or whomever she moved around with. Have you ever found anything from her original family, like the royal family? Have they I agree she was not the part of it, and they were like an outcast, but have they ever accepted her? Has it ever come to your research?
Yeah. So this is also what the question the other gentleman was asking another way. So Actually, I found a lot of it in the marital home, like in the Rathore family. So a lot of the evidence, the manuscript I found, where actually they mentioned, even though it's from the 19th century, was in the Rathore family in Jodhpur, you know. And just recently, in fact, in the ongoing research, somebody from the Rathore family contacted me. In fact, a friend was shooting in, and he happened to come across, and they believe that the film, the Shankar's film, that in the family home, the Murti of Krishna is the one that actually Meera had, had also been, So, and he was telling me about these older ladies in his family, and I'll be meeting them soon, and, so I'll be recording also with them and meeting them. So I have come across examples, but more in the marital side, the natal side. ननिहाल में ज़्यादा मिला है, मेड़ता वाले जैसे हैं, है ही वो, मतलब मीरा मेड़तनी. So what it is believed, now we don't know, again as she said, and she asked me, just as there's no proof about how much she was, how much of it is authentic, there's no proof about this, but obviously she had to leave the palace, the marital home, वो चित्तौड़ से निकली थी, and there were attempts to kill her. So then whether it is believed the Rana was good to her, but after him, so obviously then they're not interested in keeping her records. Now, of course, things are different. The last time I went to Chittor, वो दीवार पे लिखा है, चित्तौड़ की बेटी मीरा, बच्चियों को विटामिन डी दो. So, it's... And also, it's like rethinking and reimagining. I think there's been a lot of time. So there's entire, visual representation. Like we're talking about authentic text. We were also looking for visual representation, and that kind of became our key in the first film. That what did she really look like? So I didn't find much in my earlier part of the research. The second part, actually, there are some paintings, and two of them happen to be from the House of Mewar. So we know definitely by the 19th century, they had accepted her.
महाराणा प्रताप जब उनका आई थिंक ऑलमोस्ट वो जब टीनेजर्स थे 14-15, तो वो वहाँ पे गए थे मीरा जी को मिलने.
अच्छा,
सीरियल में दिखाया.
अच्छा,
लाइक
हाँ
कन्वर्सेशन.
हाँ. So yeah, I mean, this is, as we said, वो तुलसीदास जी के साथ संवाद है. Rana Pratap I didn't know, I'm hearing for the first time. I've heard of Akbar. हाँ. तो ये क्या है, because it's a little fluid. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I just quickly want to show, just 2-3 clips actually, just wind up more or less, and then we can just, yes, one final round of questions. So, what we were talking about, this corpus of Meera songs. So there are often songs in the more popular tradition also, and there's one of them that actually one of the Mirasis, there's a Mangniyar community, so we know about the Mangniyars, right? They are actually Muslims. But they have Rajput patrons, and so the gentleman I happened to meet in Jaisalmer, and this is the second part of my research, and for the second part of my research, a large part of it was funded by the IFA, the India Foundation for the Arts. I was given a grant to study Meera narratives and legends, so it's like a acknowledgement here, and I'll just quickly make you this. So also interesting, we'll anyway just watch it quickly and then.
अरे धरती माता रो मैं तो पैरू रे गा गिरो, धरती माता रो मैं तो पैरू रे गा गिरो. अमर चूंदड़ी ओढ़ू मैं, अमर चूंदड़ी ओढ़ू मैं, संतोर बेड़ी खेलूं मैं, सादोर बेड़ी खेलूं मैं, आदि पुरुष वाली चेली जी ओ जी. अरे चांद सूरज मारे अंगड़े लगाऊं, चांद सूरज मारे अंगड़े लगाऊं, मैं तो झरना रो झांझर पेरूं, मैं तो झरना रो झांझर पेरूं, मैं संत और बेड़ी खेलूं, मैं साध और बेड़ी रहूं, मैं आदि पुरुष वाली चेली जी, ओ जी। अरे धरती माता रो मैं तो पैरू रे गा गिरो, धरती माता रो मैं तो पैरू रे गा गिरो, अमर चूंदड़ी ओढ़ू, मैं अमर चूंदड़ी ओढ़ू, मैं संतोर बेड़ी के हूँ। धरती माता ने वालों पैरू रे गागरो, अमर चूंदड़ी ओढ़ू, यानी जो ये अपनी धरती है, इसको भूलना नहीं है कभी। धरती माता ने वालों पैरू, यानी इसको मैंने अपना क्या बना लिया है, जो अपन चद्दर वगैरह जो मैंने इसको दिल के अंदर बसा लिया है। धरती माता वालों पैरू गागरो, अमर चूंदड़ी ओढ़ू, मैं संतारे भेड़ी रहूँ, सादारे भेड़ी खेलूँ। जो दुनिया के अंदर जो संत हुए, सूफी संत हुए ना, उनके साथ में मेरी क्या इच्छा है कि खेलूँ, साथ में रहती हूँ मैं। तो मैं तो सीधा भगवान से क्या, मेरे तो किसी से मुझे काम नहीं है, ओनली भगवान से काम है, कृष्ण भगवान से काम है। तो इस बेस के ऊपर उन्होंने धरती माता वाला पैरू गागरो।
और वो क्या घर झरना पहनू।
So, I mean, this actually the song I first heard on the radio, and then the Mirasi said, no, it's a Mira song. Also, it's the easy reference, like, you know, Sufi bhi hai, Bhakti bhi hai, you know, it's like easy referencing from one tradition to another. I mean, he's from the he's a Mirasi for the royal family, one of the Jaisalmer royal family, and in the ongoing research, he will be sharing some songs that, because in the Rajput tradition also, on auspicious things like weddings, बाकी सब होता है, मीरा के गाने भी गाए जाते हैं, तो मीरा भजन भी होता है, तो he'll be sharing. So as onward research, and maybe the next time, I can share more of that with you. Okay, now to the second last part of it. So since this second part of the research was based more on the narrative tradition, by default it became not only about Mira and the tradition, but also the practitioners. And the one I'm going to share with you is very special. I'm going to give you only a little bit here because this is part of an ongoing project. This is Mahisha Ram, whom you had heard earlier. Okay, there's no time for this, but I do want to acknowledge, he is a very special gentleman. His name is Gulabo, and he's from the Jat community. And I had gone to him for recording the Janam Patri. So I'd gone with him to record the Janam Patri, which Paro had mentioned earlier. And the day I went, he was unwell. He had a bad asthma attack, and the plan was to go back. But in the meantime, he had passed away. So I only have a little bit of him speaking about him, but I did want to bring him into the conversation. Okay, the one I'm going to talk to you about now is Ogamraj Khiladi, and he also was known as the Queen. You know, Rajasthan mein unko Rani bulaya jata tha. So there is this tradition of khayal in Rajasthan. I mean, you would know about it. This is the play form, you know, so where the traveling troops used to do series. They used to just camp in a place and part of a village fair, and they used to have this repertoire of plays that they would perform, and one of them was the Mira one. And he was very well known to perform this. When I met him, you know, he was very ill. In fact, he passed away a few months after that. And I'm in the process again of putting together, going through archives, putting together his work. But even in that state, I think, I mean, he had a very extreme heart condition. But even then he gathered, he could not obviously perform, he had much beyond that. And he gathered his troops and did a little session for us. So I'm just going to give a glimpse of that, and then we can talk about him a bit. So this is like, you know, it's a play. So it's attributed to a Meghwal actually. It's a play performance. And isme, because, you know, I had asked him that, and he said, you know, because traditionally women were not allowed to perform in public. A lot of the women roles were taken on by men. But it's fascinating how he would talk about it. You know, he was like, मैं जब रानी बन जाता था तो मतलब 4,000 तो public होती थी और मैं होता था, और फिर, you know, I used to cry, and the cry, you know, it is like ये होता है करुणा रस, मैं रोता तो public रोती. Like he was master of his, you know, little world. And then he used to talk about the process. Like he was, जब मीरा का पाठ करो तो भगवान का तो लीन में होना ही पड़ता है. Like, you know, how do you interiorize that? And he was like, वो फेयर चलता रहता था पूरा, लोग जो भी कर रहे थे, मैं तो अपने टेंट में बस अपनी तैयारी करता था. आई शुड जस्ट फोकस ऑन द कैरेक्टर. I mean, I have much more of this, which I'll be sharing eventually. Hopefully, it will be part of a film that we are making. But the point is that he remembers, like talking about what it is about. These are entire plays, and there are texts for that. And he remembers entire, like what he was just enacting, I mean, reciting. He was doing the mother's role also, he was doing Mira's role also. And he was saying that, it's like a samvad. You don't even have to wait. You have to just respond like that. And what he was telling me is now that he's gone older, that whenever he can't get sleep, then वो सारे plays को मन में recite करते हैं, you know. And again, for him, I mean, talking about difficult woman, he was one, like he comes from a Brahmin family. And they're again farmers. And when he took this decision, so what he used to say, khayal wale aate the hamare gaon mein. And, you know, and he took to it, and there was a lot of, you know, kind of objection from his family. And like for a very long time when he got married, he had an arranged marriage, you know, like he couldn't really tell the family what he was doing, you know. And so yeah, it was very interesting about how the process, you know, he used to say, oh, purane zamane mein, you know, the men, they would not even shave their beard, and you know, they were all rough and like this. No, when I did it differently, you know. And his handmaids makes his jewelry and everything. So it's been quite fascinating. And yeah. Yeah, so usually the people you saw, his group, they what are called bhans, you know. So yeah. So thanks, yeah, forgot about that. And I've been looking for it, you know. There's one organization for whom he had performed Mira, and I hope now that I found it finally, because I did see the clothes he used to wear as Mira, like, but I haven't yet seen the performance. So hopefully, you know, I'll be getting hold of that. Yeah. Yes. No, it is always there. So this is the play itself is written by I forget his first name, by उनका नाम मतलब मेघवाल उसमें से, he's a playwright. So he wrote the Mira play actually. You know, so it's very interesting that it's written by the Meghwal, performed by Barnes, and the main guy in recent history who's done it the best is this Brahmin who kind of, you know, becomes a woman and enacts her to the best way possible. Yeah. So yeah, this brings me almost to the fag end, and there's a lot more actually. I found a very special legend which I'll be sharing, which I was looking for a very long time, but that we'll keep for the next time. I want to end this session with the most difficult one of them all. You know, Rukma Bai Mangniyar. We all know her story. I mean, she was the first Mangniyar woman. I mean, you know the Mangniyars, right? They are caste profession, musicians. And we've heard many of them, including Mami Khan and others. And, but they would not allow, so there's patriarchy within the community also. They would not allow their women to perform in public. Their patrons are basically Rajputs, and I met Rukma's mother also. तो वो जब करती थी ना, मतलब perform अपने, like she would like put on the veil. She said, you know, मैं कोई कच्ची माया थोड़ी हूँ. I'm like, you know, मैं मिरासी हूँ Rajputs की. So there's a sense of pride that we belong to the Rajputs. They are our patrons. We can't just be going anywhere and performing. Rukma was the first one to break this taboo. This was, I think, way back in the 80s. And it's quite incredible how her life story, in a way, paralleled Mira. Just show you a snatch again for now, and then we'll end the session. So I had met her briefly when I was working on my first part of my research. And the second time also, 10 years later, I was looking for her, and I just couldn't find her for a very long time. Which is incredible, because in today's time, like whoever I asked from the Mangniyar community, they would say, we don't know, you know. they're professionals.
There's no money in it as such. What's with the doing? Not having much.
No, they are. I mean, it's not that. And she's very much awarded also. When I met her like this, at this point, she's quite ill actually. She had more or less stopped singing. Yeah. So she's much awarded, recognized. Yeah. Yeah.
Revival of the Mangalards. Are you asking about the economics of the circuit?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like, can I jump?
Please, please.
So the theatre, so the way theatre works across a lot of performance works across a lot of rural India, right? It's not that they're rich. Yeah, they don't look rich. They don't look rich. They're not rich, but it's a livelihood. It's not as if they're. In fact, you make less money doing theatre in Bombay than you make money performing across. They have full circuits. They're performing for months on end, right? They have set audiences because villages are used to seeing this over and over again. So there's an entire professional circuit and there's an entire professional life, which includes economics, which includes barter, which includes all of those things, right? So it's actually far more professional than what we experience, what we tend to experience in the city.
Yeah, and they also have, they're tied to patrons. So the patrons also contribute in kind. Yeah, those that I say.
You mentioned at the very beginning, one of the most striking things was how different these renditions are from what we are used to from CDs and recordings from earlier. Now, when you come back from the desert, back into the city with musicians who are not bhajanis, but who are traditionally trained from some or the other gharana, what's the most interesting response you found from them? Do they only say, okay, this is raw and elemental sincerity, nothing much more musically or technically? Or do they say, wow, there are facets of music and artistry that we can employ as well? So, what has your experience been?
So it's a good question. I haven't spoken to very many of them. Maybe I should be doing that. I mean, but there is Shubha Mudgal, and she is a classically trained singer, and she has in fact, incorporated, and in fact her record company Underscore was working with a lot of the musicians. So, and there's of course Kumar Gandharv, so exactly, yes. So to answer your question, I haven't spoken to very many. Maybe some of them have a resistance, but those who have been open to it, it's, I think, in a way, changed their music, right?
I don't think they, in fact, all classical music in India comes from folk music. That is like recognized by them and then
Yeah,
also.
yeah. And now that you're talking about it, I mean, if you've heard Lata Mangeshkar's Meera songs, they are actually quite. You should. I mean, the music director is a brother, Vidyanath, and the way she is like. There is this song where Meera leaves the fort, and the way she sung it, So it's not to say that there are very many classical singers also who have sung Meera songs beautifully.
And incorporated the folk, like Kishori Amakar, Meera
Yeah.
also incorporated
Yes.
the folk sounds into
Yeah. 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 Huh? I can send you the link. It's Meera Gad se utri met, Gad se utri metani. And the significance of that, that she's leaving the whole royal household. So, which I found on the ground because I've heard this song in the folk tradition also. And they say it's a huge moment. Matlab, it's almost like insulting the powers that be. And Lata sung it beautifully, Lata Mangeshkar. Many of the other songs also in that album.
In my research, I've come across a book in which they say that in certain parts of Rajasthan, Meera is still considered a derogatory term.
Yeah.
So when you say Meera, it's used in that way. Could you speak about?
So I had heard about that also a lot, and a lot of that for me came from this book by Parita Mukta called Upholding the Community, the Mirabai community, and she actually had met people, including the custodians of the Chittor fort, who speaks about it, and this was in the 90s. When I started my research, one-to-one I didn't come across that much of it, but I did speak to some of the one Rajput academician. And he said not so much derogatory, because also there's been a reimagining, an acceptance of her down the years, So at least, I mean, people I spoke to, I didn't come across such an instance in an obvious way. But they do say that they don't name their daughter Mira, you know, because, and it's for many reasons. One of them being that, she should not take to the life of a renouncer, that she should not suffer like Mira did, considering that she's their own daughter. So, yes. But definitely there seems to be some kind of a silence around her, about her, for a long time after she left the palace. And the interesting part is that, of course, this is part of legend also, that when she reached Dwarka in the end, uh, the Rana, ostensibly the brother-in-law, sent his Brahmins to call her back. And the unofficial legend is there was a drought in Chittor, or whatever the reason, maybe by that time she was, whatever the reason, but they actually tried to bring her back.
I was also wondering about the community traditions of women in Rajasthan, and is there any dance
Yeah.
in the Mira?
Yes, it's a good one. I didn't show you that clip, but there is, especially in when women get together. I had attended a couple of those sessions, especially with Santosh. The first time I met her, in fact, she was with her group of ladies, and they were all, and especially on special occasions, they sing Mira songs and they dance, So yes, there is that tradition too. Not a tradition, but people do it. Women do it. I wouldn't say it's a tradition like that, but women do it. Yes. Yes, yes. So hopefully we'll be able to show them soon. So this was, huh? This first one is online. Films Division and All Their Wisdom have put it online. So it's online for those who want to see. Having said that, the original film we shot on film, so if some of you want to screen it, please, then I can put a requisition, get the print out.
I would like to, I tried to show it and I couldn't. I went to film division, but they.
So there's a special process for that, I mean, we had cracked it actually, how to get the film out from there. So yes, there's actually a film version of it. And yeah, there's a second film we are working on, and hopefully we'll be able to show that also sometime soon.
When do you finish the second film?
I should have finished it a while back, but
No, where do you, any idea?
I hope to finish it by next year for sure.
Because our festival is in January of 2020, and it's our 10th edition.
Okay.
And I'll be very happy to see it.
Sure, we can share something for sure. We'll part of the ongoing research. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah. So in the process of your research, which has obviously spanned many years, do you see a change in the level of knowledge or the way the singers are, taking up Mira singing? Has there been some kind of a change? Is it modernizing, or is it becoming more commercial, or is it still quite steady? I mean, it's sort of similar.
Okay, so most of the the musicians you met here today, most of them are there, not there anymore. So that obviously that generation is gone. The people who are there is interest, but there's less interest. And of course, it's not only Mira, the entire, all of us now part of this marketplace. So like us, everybody is part of that marketplace. So to that extent, yes, it is all, but having said that, I have recently connected to a couple of younger singers whom I'll be meeting, and so there are obviously changes, and for example, talking about, the woman that Jabin here was talking about, and she's worked closely with me on both the films. So there is this Mira festival which used to happen. Now, of course, it's run by the tourism board. And this Khel performance, the Khayal I was showing you, used to be performed there, but now they call parties from Bombay. So, singers from Bombay on popular demand. So these are the changes. It's all got kind of gone in a different way.
What is Sufi in the popular conception has changed so much.
Yeah.
And governed by what Bollywood chose that.
Yeah.
So, that is
yeah.
So I'm going to have to call out because the venue has to close, but I want to thank first of all you for managing the session so fantastically, even though there was a
My pleasure. My pleasure.